Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I am your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Currently, my daughter and I are coaching one of the best AAU teams in the country. Well, I'm excited for this episode, Piston fans. We're going to get into the fact that this very well could be one of the biggest seasons in off seasons in Piston history. There are so many things going on in this off season. Every off season there are things that can change a franchise, but this season with the high draft pick and the possibilities of getting Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, or Brandon Miller could really very well really be a big uptick for our franchise. We also have the new coaching hire, and obviously that can make all the difference in the world in a franchise going forward if we get the right guy. And then we have the possibilities of free agency and trades, where we have some good trade chips. We have money to spend in free agency. So this could so likely be a huge season for in so many ways for our franchise. So let's get started first with talking about the draft. And we all know that we have 14% chance only of getting Victor, and he would just turn this franchise upside down. Our arena would be packed every night. We would get nationally televised games, but most of all, we would have a great chance of winning. And I'm not even sure if we got Victor, it's not going to still happen instantly, but it would make a big difference. I still think Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller would be huge consolation prizes and could very easily turn things around. After that, it's a little bit tricky. A lot of people have Amen Thompson, one of the twins that played for Overtime Elite. You know, him and his twin brother Asur are freaky athletes that can handle the ball flawlessly. They can have all the moves in the world. They're real twitchy, and they are great passers. They're unselfish. They have certainly potential to be outstanding defenders, which we need on the wing, but the downside on them is their shooting. So we, just Asar, I know he shot 48% from twos, only 30% on threes. Now, he did shoot in their Overtime Elites, in their tournament, he shot in the 40s on threes. And, again, their whole season is really quite a small sample size, and their competition level isn't very good. And I mean, a lot of the stuff they have there, the fast break, the rate of pace is really fast. There's a lot of fast breaks and a lot of stuff going on in the open court, which obviously they just are marvelous in the open court. But he only shot 67% on free throws, which isn't terrible. But, a lot of times people say that even if their three-point shooting isn't good, if their free throw shooting is good, that means they have a pretty sound shot. So another guy is Cam Whitmore. I really like Cam Whitmore. He is a stud. He is big and strong. He's like 6'7", but he's real athletic, and he can jump. He doesn't have much wiggle in his game, but he can get to the rim with power and force. And some people think he's a real good defender. So we'll see about that. But he averaged 12.5 points a game playing for Villanova, and they had a bad team this year. So historically they're real good, especially in recent years, but they really struggled. He was injured, so he missed the first part of the season, and again, he had a team that was hard to fit in with, and so his stats and his game, I think it was challenging for him to get through the year, but he did show a lot of signs of promise. He had 5.3 rebounds, only half of assists a game. I'm not sure how much he handled the ball, but he shot 48% from the floor and 34% on threes and 70% from the line. So he's another guy that's going to be there that I kind of like, but I'm not crazy about him. Also, another guy that a lot of people talk about is Jarris Walker. I think he has probably a real high floor. I think that he's more of a 4 and not a 3. He's not got the fast twitch. He's not real smooth, or he's not, he doesn't got the real wiggle to his hips and stuff that he can make moves, but he is a great defender. He works real hard. He's strong. He's a solid passer. I don't want him for our team, and I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I've been right a lot more than I've been wrong, but I've been wrong before. And so he shot 46%, excuse me, from the floor, 34% on threes, and 66% from the free throw line. So those are some of the guys that might end up there. So that's reason why if I was given the chance to make a trade, I would be really open to a trade. And anywhere if we got the fourth or fifth pick, the thing about trades, and we might as well dive into it right now. Everybody talks about trading. Oh, should we trade Boyan? Should we not trade Boyan? Should we trade Burks or not trade Burks? Everybody wants to trade Marvin Bagley. Well, Piston fans, here's the trick. The thing is you need to trade it if the right trade is there, and if it's not there, and I mean I'm oversimplifying things, but I really believe that. I think you can't go into this, especially I plan on us winning. I think we are going to win 15 to 20 more games, depending on how everything plays out with the draft and free agency or trades. But I think that no matter what, we are going to, and if we get a good coach, I think we're going to win significantly more games. Like I said, at least 15 more games. But we still have some things to resolve, like can Stu shoot the three? Is Wiseman a real NBA player? Is he got the chance to be a starter or a rotational player? We have to find that out. This is the last year we'll probably ever take a look at Killian. And so all those things need to be worked out. Ivy and Duran, they were unbelievable. And the improvement they showed in their rookie season was out of this world for rookies. And so they need to get better, though. They're still just babies. And Cade is still young. And Cade's really still he's played the equivalent of one season in the NBA. And so there's things next year that need to be ironed out. But I think, unlike this year, we're going to win games, not maybe make the playoffs, but we're going to win games. So anyway, the big thing is we don't need to trade just for the sake of trading. We don't need to sign free agents for the sake of signing free agents. There's not a lot of great ones out there, but if the thing about is timing. So most of the time we would want to go for the big trade is like when the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we're going to discuss them and their rebuild in a minute, but they got Donovan Mitchell. But first, they were a bad team. They made some good draft picks, and they got better. They jumped from 22 wins to 44 wins the year that in 2021 when they got Mobley, and then they got Mitchell. And so that's the kind of thing you got to watch. But the thing is, too, Davion Mitchells aren't available every day. So you do have to be ready for the moment if there's a player that's worth getting that you need to make that trade. But this isn't the year that we need to make it unless there's something that's really awesome for us to grab. So that's where we are with the draft. Like I said, May 16th, that's when they're during the halftime, I think, or between games of the playoffs, they're going to roll the ping pong balls, and we're going to see where our draft pick will be, and that could alter Piston history for sure. The other big thing is the coaching. So there's just examples, and we're going to go through this right now, and with teams, and Piston fans are discouraged. We have lost so many games, but I'm here to tell you that it's happened with other teams. So they've had to go through the same struggles and stuff. So. But who we hire as a coach, has paid off for other teams when they've turned things around. The Phoenix Suns. So in 2016, Phoenix Suns, 23 wins. 2017, 24 wins. 2018, 21 wins. 2019, 19 wins. Does that sound familiar, Piston fans? That's even a worse stretch than we had. But they lost all those games. Then all of a sudden, 2020, 34 wins. And then they dropped back down. In 2021, they jumped up to 51 wins. And so then, they just, things fell into place. They got Devin Booker in 2015. He progressed, just like these young players all need to progress. I've talked before, most of these great players like Steph and Giannis and LeBron and all these guys, and there's a whole bunch more that when they turned 27, that's when they first won their first NBA championship. Cade's 21 or 20. Maybe Cade's just 22, turned 22. But anyway, we're not quite there yet. But this showed the progression that the Phoenix Suns went through, and they got Ayton. They had the number one choice pick in 2018, and they drafted Ayton, so he's a big part of their team. They traded And this is another thing, Troy keeps on trying to trade for these guys. He traded to the 76ers for Mikal Bridges. And Mikal Bridges is phenomenal. He's having this heck of a year this year once he got traded to the Nets especially. But they traded him for, he was the 10th player they picked, the Sixers picked in 2021. And they traded him for the Suns had Zaire Smith they drafted with the 16th pick, but they traded Zaire Smith and a first round unprotected draft pick for Mikal Bridges. And then Mikal Bridges turned into this great player, great 3-and-D guy, and then even though they didn't keep him, and they might regret that someday, but they got Kevin Durant, and he was the biggest chip in them getting Kevin Durant. So we got to see how much they improved and how they did take that big jump. From going from 22 wins to 44 wins, and that doesn't likely happen. This past year, I think the Kings jumped 18 wins, and the next most biggest jump was taken by the Orlando Magic, and they only jumped 12 wins. So it's hard to jump 15 wins. So I still am optimistic it's going to happen no matter what. When we talk about coaches, the formula seems to be working for a lot of teams is hiring these young guys like Mark Daigneault, and he's with Oklahoma City. So they're right in the middle there. Maybe they are a step ahead of us in the rebuild because they made the play-in tournament this year, but they were able to trade and get a super Paul George for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is a superstar. So we really started from ground zero. We didn't have a player like Paul George to trade to get a player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was incredible and super young. And plus, on top of that, they got a whole bunch of draft picks. So anyway, they hired Mark Daigneault, and he's only 38 years old. He was the student manager at UConn. So a lot of these young guys really worked their way up from the bottom floor. They're not NBA players, former players, or people who, just got lucky breaks. These are guys who got down at a young age. They dug in and they paid their dues and they worked their way up. But he was a student manager for UConn from 2003 to 2007. He was an assistant at Florida, got a job working for Billy Donovan, who was very successful there, who ended up going to OKC. And then he got hired as the G League coach for Oklahoma City. And then Billy Donovan, they reunited back with the Thunder, and so he was an assistant there. Then he got hired, but he is on top of things. If you watch him coach, he is incredible, and I'm hoping that we follow the same kind of pattern. And there's a coincidence. Charles Lee, he's been around a long time now, but he's only 38 years old, and so he's the guy that's the assistant with the Bucks and been with Budenholzer, and so he's maybe my favorite pick. And we're going to talk about some of those. We're going to go through some of those things, but we're going to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2018-2019, they were 19-63. That's right down there in the gutter like we are. And then the next year they were 19-20. So and then the next year they were 19-46. That was a shortened year. And at the end of that year, that was when John Beilein was there, and he got fired at the end of the year, and they were struggling. And then they hired J.D. Bickerstaff. So you see that I didn't mention that when the Suns hired their coach, Monty Williams, who is considered a phenomenal coach, was in 2019. And that was the year that they only won 19 games. And then they went to the bubble, and at the end of the bubble, they won all 8 games, which people thought that was something that just gave them a little bit of burst, and so they end up. But like I said, there was a coaching change here. Monty Williams became the coach right in the midst of when they had been bad, just like the Pistons are bad, and then he took over, and even OKC, they weren't good, and then Mark Daigneault took over for them, and they made a huge jump this year. So, but the Cavs, Bickerstaff took over in 2020-21, and they jumped up to 22 wins that year. But then the next year, they had some good young players, and they got Evan Mobley, and they traded for Jarrett Allen, and they jumped to 44 wins in 1 year. And then that's when they cashed in some of their chips. They traded 3 first-round draft picks, and they traded some really good players that are traded to Utah. And so but they got Davion Mitchell, and he is, awesome. And they were 51-31. I'm surprised they weren't even better this year. They had the number one defense. So again, Piston fans, that shows you how the progression works. And these are two recent examples of teams who are down in the depths of despair, just like you are right now, just like us Piston fans are right now. But it just shows you what can happen if you do the right things. But again, I see that this summer and this spring is the biggest, though. I mean, there's with the coaching, the draft picks, and the possible trades. And like I said, I am not all for just trading people unless we get the right deal, trading the draft pick or trading Bojan or trading Burks. If we get the right pick, we got to be ready to pounce on it, whether we get a young athletic wing or whether we trade and get another draft pick or whatever we can get. But I'm going to just take a quick minute to just run down through. We're interviewing. I mean, Troy is, like I said, he does his due diligence. He's interviewing everybody. So there's a lot of people rumored, and there's people that have confirmed that the Pistons have requested permission from different organizations. We're interviewing Jerome Allen, who was our assistant. He also was an assistant with the Celtics for 6 years. He was the head coach at Penn. His record was 65-104 losses, 65 wins and 104 losses, and he's 50 years old. So, I think he's probably a good coach, but he's probably not one that I would pick. So, Rex Clamian, he's 55. He's been an assistant coach. You probably saw him when KC got COVID and stuff. He took over and ran the team for a while there, and he coached at OKC when Troy was there, so he has a connection with Troy. Jaron Collins he's the lead assistant for the Pelicans, who are an up-and-coming team, but he's 44 years old. He was on the staff for the Warriors when they won 3 championships. He started out in player development. A lot of these guys he was only for 1 year, but a lot of these young coaches, they started out at a young age, showed that they were good coaches in player development, and then they got promoted. So Brian Keefe is with the Nets. He's 46 years old. He was on OKC staff when Troy was there. And like I mentioned last episode, Troy tends to go back to people that he feels comfortable with, that he has history with, that he has knowledge of. But Brian Keefe, he was with OKC when Durant and Westbrook and Harden were there. And Durant says he taught him everything he knows. That was his thing. Then he also coached for the Lakers and the Knicks, and he was a video coordinator for the Suns. So again, Brian Keefe has worked his way up. Chris Quinn was assistant for the Heat. He is an assistant for the Heat. He's 39 years old. He's Spoelstra's right-hand man, and he filled in for Spoelstra when he was sick or had to be out for some games. And the Heat organization is real good. Spoelstra worked his way up from the video room. So that's another example of a guy that, those guys have shown through, in recent years that they're successful. And I talked about Charles Lee. He might be my favorite at the moment, and when I say my opinions about draft picks, I don't have the inside information. I don't get to sit in an interview room. I wish I did. When Sir Thompson and Cam Whitmore and Jarris Walker, I would love to see them in a workout. I would love to sit in the room and pick their brain and interview them and see how they're wired. But I don't get to. I just get to go off, what I hear in the media and from scouts, and then I formulate my opinions and do the best I can. But Kevin Ollie's 50. Again, he coached at UConn. They won the national championship. He got caught doing some illegal recruiting, which, again, hard. I'm not going to be a judge. And there's speculation that most teams recruit illegally. And so I'm sure he's not the only one, but he got caught. And so he lost his job at UConn, and he's been working with the Overtime Elite with the Thompson twins. And he's obviously into player development and coaching. And so he's another candidate. I talked about Jay Wright. I'm not even sure if he's a candidate. He just gets talked about because he was so successful, and he's just a class act at Villanova. Adrian Griffin was an NBA player. He's 48 years old, and he's for the Raptors and works with Nick Nurse. And Ami Adoka, he's 45, that works for the Celtics. He was with the Spurs and worked for Pop, and he took his team as in his first year. They had a lot of talent, but he still took them in the first year and turned them into the number one defensive team in the NBA in 1 year. But he has that, the issues with breaking club rules, having an affair with one of the female staffers, and so anyway, like I said, this is exciting time, man. The draft is June 22nd. The lottery is when they figure out what the draft order is, May 16th, and we are interviewing this week these coaching candidates. So there's never been, I think a lot of excitement for me, and there's so many possibilities, and it looks like there's gonna be a lot of changes. Things are gonna change, and I gave you a breakdown of what Cleveland did and what Phoenix did, and how they climbed from being terrible teams, and how the progression worked, and that's a lot like what we're going through. If you look at our timeline, and we had 3 seasons in a row where we won 23, 21, and 17 wins, and so a lot of those other teams, and now they're fighting in the playoffs, and they've got chances. Both teams have a chance to go quite a ways. So thank you for listening. If you're watching on Spotify, leave a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. It helps me. It makes a difference. Just click the button and thumbs up. And if you see somebody that you know that needs some help, and you can help them in any way. If you have a sick friend, go visit them. If you have, a grandma, give her a call and do something nice for somebody today. Smile at a stranger and have a great day, and go Pistons.